Hello, my lovelies. Today is the 2025 Fundraisers Crystal Ball episode. I am with a new guest today, the nonprofit prophet. How are you, Mr. Bell?
I am doing really, really well, thank you. But I think you already knew that,
I did.
being the fortune teller that you are today. But what an exciting topic today to talk about. Just kind of what does the crystal ball look like for fundraisers in 2025? So we're going to do our best today, Julia, right, to talk about the unknown and the things that folks may or may not need to be prepared for as we slide right into 2025.
Well, you are right, my friend. And I think sometimes in the nonprofit sector, we're so reactionary. We don't get ahead of the crystal ball, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I think this will be kind of a fun conversation to have. And again, today I'm Madam Fundraise, and you're the nonprofit prophet. So we're getting really into this. You have this like fabulous
Yes,
jacket.
sparkly, my fortune teller jacket.
I love it. I'm wearing my Swami hat. I'm loving this look so much. The velvet and the lame, gold lame, might have to just like weave this into my workaday world. We'll see.
Yeah, why
But
not?
why not? Why not? Hey, and another part of our amazing fortune telling cast, they include our sponsors. But as Tony said, you probably already knew that. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, where we are at today, Your Part Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. If you didn't know, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO in my workaday world life at the American Nonprofit Academy, and I am joined by the amazing Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Tony and I join forces every Friday for Fundraisers Friday. It's really, I got to say, one of my best parts of the week, Tony. I get to be with you, learn from you, be motivated with you, by you, but it's just an episode dedicated to fundraisers and not like necessarily the art of fundraising, but to the actual people doing this hard work. And so we talk about a lot of different things that really impact the professional life of a fundraiser in the nonprofit sector. And I think it's just been a riveting journey so far, Tony. So I'm thrilled you're here with me.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and again, I love this space so much, and anything we can do to help elevate or empower the work of fundraisers, I'm behind 1,000%.
Yeah. Well, and it's just something that doesn't get done, right? We talk so much about losing fundraisers and how they don't stay. We can't retain them within our organizations. And frankly, it's because they're getting burned out.
Mhm. For
And
sure.
so, I love some of these conversations that we have every Friday. Okay, so crystal ball prophecy comes to us in a lot of different ways. Yeah, hum to hum. Um, and first one, integration of AI. Okay, we know that, duh. But and fundraising, the two coming together. Um, what say you?
Yeah, so I don't think that this being kind of the number one prophecy would be a surprise to. I think everyone could be a fortune teller around what the number one prophecy might be for 2025, because AI has certainly already made its mark in the nonprofit sector just over the last 6 to 7 months. I mean, I've seen a lot of folks really kind of shifting their professional focus from other things that they might have been doing, for example, strategic planning or grant writing, and really focusing on learning everything they can about AI so that then they can be those subject matter experts as this gets more and more integrated into the everyday work of fundraisers and nonprofit executives.
Right.
So when we talk about this number one prophecy of AI and fundraising, one of the first things that comes up, of course, is ethical behavior in fundraising in the use of AI. So I encourage folks as you're going down this road, really your first conversation is how do we implement this tool? This is not a human replacement. AI is another tool in our toolbox to help us be the best we can be for the organizations that we serve.
Mhm.
So having that, thinking about what information are we putting into AI? How secure is the information that we're putting into the AI tool that we're using? So really doing your diligence around what tools are you subscribing to in the AI arena, and what
Mhm.
information are you putting in AI? Because often, of course, we're dealing with sensitive and privileged information. Uh,
Right.
so first I think about, ethical behavior around AI, and what are your standards of practice going to be within your organization when it comes to the use of AI, and how transparent are you going to be that you are using AI in your space?
Okay, so even though I have my crystal ball here in my hand, not what I thought you would say, and I really appreciate your train of thought on that. I think that's really smart. I really like that because you're right. I think we forget that part of this system is that what we put out or what we put in actually goes out, and it's not a one-way directional, right? I mean, the things that we're putting in, it's going into that whole ecosystem, if you will.
And
So
and I
very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not an expert in AI, and I think like a lot of folks, I'm learning about it, I'm leaning into it in the areas where I feel like it's going to help enhance the work that I do in service to others.
Mhm.
Uh, but really, some from what I understand is that there are AI tools that have higher levels of security. So again, just thinking about the tools that you're using, what are you subscribing to, and how well protected is the information that you're putting into the AI tool. So again, the first thing I think about is ethics,
Yeah.
and when you're going down this road. But then when you're thinking about using AI, like what would you use it for? So, you can use it in ways that help further the personalization of communication to donors.
Right.
Um, it can definitely help with a lot of marketing. Again, it will never replace the human touch, the the feeling and the empathy that we put into a lot of our communication.
Right.
Uh, so again, just a super tool for a lot of marketing, for grant writing.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone recently because I'm helping a small nonprofit with grant writing. And so someone said, well, are you utilizing AI in support of that? And I said, absolutely. I'm utilizing AI in support of the grant writing.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
they
yeah.
said, well, does your client know that? And I said, well, does my client need to know that? When I think of AI as another tool in our toolbox, are we always talking to our clients about every tool that we're using
Yeah.
to build the foundation of the work that we're doing for them? No, no, we're not. But in my scenario and the way I use it, I write the drafts, then I put them through AI to help enhance what I've already done. I don't
Right.
go to AI and say, do this for me. I'm always, putting in some type of draft initially. And again, being
Right.
sensitive about the information that may be in that draft as well. So,
Yeah.
so definitely heighten personalization with your writing, whether that be for marketing or grants, proposals. It can certainly help with that as well. And then just reminding yourself that AI is a human collaboration. It's not here to replace us. It's here
Right.
to collaborate with us, and again, help us be better at the
Right.
work that we do.
Well, my background is in publishing, and I can remember when Photoshops first came out and Adobe and all their products. Everybody was like, "Well, it's going to destroy the art departments, and it's going to, we're going to lose all this talent." And it actually meant that we needed more educated and even more people, right, to use these products, and we got better results. We created better products. So, I think there's always a lot of upset with something new and something that can be a little frightening or changes the behavior of a group that's worked the same way for a long time. and we could argue that that's, humankind, right? It's been working a lot, one way without this input. And so we're all going to have to understand how this shifts things. And I think personally, Tony, the person that leans in, the group that leans in, they're going to win quicker. They're going to reach the finish line faster. Okay, let's go on to prophecy number 2. And that is the silver tsunami, the boomer demographic shifts. To me, this is one of the, and I didn't number these according to import. I just, I put them, all in my turban and pulled them out. But to me, Tony, this is like the number one, I think, impactor that we're not talking about. It involves labor, it involves finances. We have this huge shift and transference of wealth. We have loss that we're dealing with. We have aging parents that we're dealing with.
Mhm.
All of this stuff, we ourselves are aging, not you, of course, but me. So to me, I feel like we got to be talking about this.
Yeah, well, you're right. We do need to talk about it, and I've seen some articles about it and some information, but again, I think it's a prophecy that is going to be fulfilled. Right? We're all
Yeah.
aging. There's nothing we can do about that. But we can be prepared for how that impacts the way in which we do business and the way we manage our organizations and provide services to our communities.
Mhm.
So we've talked about this, we meaning like me and other folks, over the last decade,
Yeah.
around just the importance of diversification of fundraising streams.
Yes.
And one of the ways in which to diversify your fundraising stream, of course, is around legacy giving. And so you really need to be having conversations, especially with your current donor base, and especially those donors that have been with your organization for an extended period of time. You need to start introducing them to the concept of planned giving and legacy giving, and
Mhm.
what that looks like and what that means, to them. It's also the perfect time to get more engaged with your donors in terms of children, grandchildren, generational giving, and start getting the rest of the family passionate about what it is that dad or mom or grandma or nana or pop pop are, participating in and contributing to.
Yeah.
So I think that planned giving and looking at how we start these multi-generational conversations within our donor base are going to be really important to kind of ride this wave in the best possible way.
I love that you said that because I think that's beautifully spoken. And I think it's really important to realize that generationally, what triggers the support emotionally, financially, physically of one generation may not translate to the next generation, right? And so you got to really do your work on this and be understanding about it's not just a given. You got to lean in and understand how you're going to be able to cultivate this next demographic. So I love that you said that. I think that's super important. Well, let's go
And
on to, oh, did I interrupt you?
well, no, I'm sorry. It's just to say, the other thing is to keep in mind too when we're talking about the silver tsunami, and the same thing with our next prophecy, is that communication needs to be specific to these audiences. And so when we're communicating with boomers versus Gen Z, it's a different approach in our communication. And so I just wanted to remind folks that, again, this isn't something that is brand new. It's that I'm sharing, but just a reminder to be very intentional around your communication and being very mindful around the audience that is intended for.
And I love that you said that because that's a perfect, segue into prophecy number 3, understanding Gen Z giving trends. If you're still talking about understanding the Mills giving trends, you're way behind. We've moved past the Mills and we are now on to Gen Z. And so understanding, I love what you said because this is very true. How we communicate, when we communicate, what which with what technology and snail mail versus text or social media platforms. And it's not Facebook, I mean, it's all these different ways to be thinking about this. And I don't know, Tony, it seems to me, and this, I'm going to go out on a limb here, it seems to me that we are not including or developing Gen Z fundraisers, right? We're not bringing them to the table within our organizations to ask. We're asking a bunch of boomers, hey, how do you think we should connect to these people, right? It doesn't really work that way, maybe as effectively.
Well, I think like anything else that we talk about on the show, it just depends, I think, on the, what market you're serving and, and what is that, what are the norms within your market kind of look like?
Mhm.
I can tell you in the South Florida market, there are a lot of young professional groups and affinity groups that are really focused on Gen Z and just, educating younger donors on the impact that they can have in their communities and
Mhm.
again the different ways in which they can participate in philanthropy uh, because you also talked about what's the onboarding look like. I mean, these
Yeah.
folks are not sitting down and writing a check and mailing it into your office.
No, no.
That it's a whole different kind of approach and onboarding for these types of donors. So, being mindful of that. Again, the communication, uh, values driven. They
Mhm.
want to know the impact. They want to know, what are the core values of the organization. They want to know what are the core values of the leadership.
Mhm.
They want to make sure, that they're aligned with the CEO in many cases.
Right.
Uh, so again, just being really mindful, taking the time needed to really do your research and understand, who it is that you're communicating with.
Right.
So
I
again,
love
ethics, transparency,
it.
technology. These are the things that I think of when I think of Gen Z
Yeah.
and their participation in the sector.
And it's so interesting, Tony. I mean, these three prophecies have total alignment.
Total
If you
alignment.
think about it, they're not just like out in left field. I mean, they really have a thread that's being woven through to all of these pieces. So
Mhm.
let's go on to prophecy number 4. And that again, I would say that is factoring into what you just said.
Mhm.
Increased performance measurements and metrics. I think this is one of the things that we forget about in the nonprofit sector because we've been so enmeshed in this concept of if we get people tipsy at an event and we make them cry, we're going to get them to open up their checkbook. Checkbooks are no longer there. We aren't having events. And the new donor is less emotional and more measure and metric oriented.
Right.
Such a hard message for our sector to get to buy into.
Yeah, no, no, it is. But I think that, like many topics that we discuss on a weekly basis, this is one of those things where folks have been hearing about this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I think depending when we talk about diversification of funds, depending on what that diversification looks like for you, let's just say, for example, your organization is very grant heavy. You rely a lot on grant funding.
Mhm.
Metrics and measurements are something that are probably part of your standard operating procedures and have been for some time because that level of information and detail is so important, not only in the obtainment of a grant, but in the follow-up and the reporting of
Yes.
how well did you invest the money? What were the outcomes? Again, how many people did you serve? Did you feed? Did you clothe? How many folks had access to something that they didn't have access to before because of your great work? So metrics and measurements are nothing new. But to your point, Julia, as we talk about uh, Gen Z donors and what that looks like for the future of philanthropy, that information definitely needs to be available, readily available, uh, and needs to be transparent.
Mhm.
Um, and I would also say communicate it in a fun way. Like
Yeah,
I mean,
interesting.
I love infographics. I mean, I love all of those things. So there's, you can performance measurements and metrics don't have to be like, what's like a rice cake. I mean, it doesn't have to be dry and dry
Yeah.
and,
No,
and,
I,
and not
yeah,
funny.
no. I love that you said that because I can remember in my own community hearing about the need for foster care and everything from families to policies to funding, and it's like, yeah, wow, this is a problem. Throughout my life, I've heard about this until one day I was with a CEO of a large organization in my state who works with in the foster care system. And she said, Julia, we have enough foster care kids in foster care every night to fill our main our main stadium.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
where an NBA team plays. It's where
mhm,
all the concerts are. It is one of the largest places that we have for public gathering in a
mhm,
building. And that was years, more than a decade ago. And I cannot go to an event in that building. It's now called Footprint Center, where I don't walk through those doors and I look, and in my mind, I fill all those seats with children,
mhm.
foster care children. And, she took a number that I had heard and I knew, and it was like in my head, but I couldn't relate to it.
Right.
If you put that into a context, that has stuck with me. And so I think you're right. Like, how do we communicate our data points and our metrics? How do we make it more real? You know, we hear the things like so many times around the globe, so many football fields,
Right.
things like that. They work,
They
right?
work.
They work. And I agree with you. I think we can get a lot of information, we can get a lot of metrics, but how do we communicate it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, let's go to our next one because I've been
Okay.
yammering on and I want to hear what you have to say about this. And that's the demand for more collaboration, actually coming from funders, foundations, even large donors, institutional donors. What do you see on this? Because this is a tough one for a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be. And the reason why I say it shouldn't be is because not one organization can serve all the needs of a community.
Yep.
Uh, and even when we look at when I think back to all of the organizations that were created to support the HIV AIDS community.
Mhm.
Not one organization could satisfy all the needs. So you needed multiple service organizations to meet the needs of a community. I think when you talk about any health related uh, kind of issue, it takes multiple organizations. So I think collaboration is, in my opinion, has always been super important to the success in meeting the needs of a community. So I'm grateful if there is a push from funders uh, for there to be more collaboration amongst nonprofits that are serving the same space. I
Mhm.
had the real honor of serving as kind of the facilitator and strategic planner for a special needs advisory coalition in a county here in South Florida, and it was in a large county. So let me say that a really large county in South Florida, and it was shocking when we had our first initial meetings to see how many of those organizations, all serving the special needs community in the same county, had not heard of each other or had
Oh,
never or had never met. Uh, so it's remarkable. And so when I think of collaboration, I think of the power of what it's like when you get all of those organizations in a room together and they start talking about what they're doing or what they would want to do with more resources. And then the other organization's like, oh, well, I'm doing that, but if I
yeah.
had a little more support, I could do more. So again, I think collaboration is key.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think collaboration also supports consensus building.
Mhm.
And I think that consensus building is a little bit of a lost art. So I
Yeah.
think that collaboration supports consensus building,
Mhm.
uh, and so I think it's a great prophecy, and I hope it's very much fulfilled through foundations and other donors.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. We're stronger together. It's human nature to be a little worried about who's getting what piece of the pie. And even though, you would think that the nonprofit sector, we're doing the work of the angels and that we're above petty human jealousy and all the drama that comes with that, that's just not the case,
It's
right?
just not, no, and that's the reality. So I think we should just embrace that reality and know that that's going to exist. But instead of thinking about our piece of the pie, we should really just think about the pie, because the
Right.
pie is what's feeding the community, right? The pie is what's solving the issues that we're all here to help solve. So
Right.
I think when we all sit around and talk about the pie versus our piece of it, we end up doing really remarkable things.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous way to end on and to start the new year. I mean, it's just a really profound way to kind of re-energize ourselves. We've talked about AI, we've talked about demographic shifts, we've talked about metrics, we've talked about collaboration. All of these things really they work together and they're so much more powerful together. Not one of them stands out alone. I think that was like my big lesson today, Tony, is that they really, as Madam Fundraise, as Madam Fundraise, you know, if you take bits and pieces of all these things and put them together, to go back to the pie, it's going to taste a lot better. It's going to be a lot more palatable, and you're going to get requests for more, right? So I think we need to be thinking about this kind of a little bit more holistically. It's
Uh-huh.
very, very interesting. I also think, too, Tony, this Gen Z component, we were so worried about the millennials. I mean, all of this. And now we've blown through that. We got to be talking about these next generations because they're coming at a clip that we have to reorient how we work with this in terms of our teams, our
Mhm.
donors, our community leaders, our neighbors. I mean, it's an interesting shift, isn't it?
Well, we also, I don't, not that I can recall during my career so far, Julia, uh, but I don't remember ever having to, what's the word? I don't want to say fight because that's not the word I really want, but it's the word that's coming to mind. I've never thought that I would have to fight to convince someone of the relevancy of the nonprofit sector and the
Yeah.
relevancy and importance of nonprofit organizations. But there is communication and messaging out there in the world today
Mhm.
that challenges people to think differently about nonprofits, that
Mhm.
they're shady and shifty and all of them are just not good.
Right.
So we also need to think about how we can stay ahead of that kind of messaging, at least that I've started to see kind of popping in and out of some of my social, uh,
Mhm.
to make sure that, again, younger donors, newer generations really have a clear understanding of what a nonprofit does
Yeah.
and the impact that it has on the communities that they serve.
Wow, that just gave me chills, even under my hot lame turban. I really love that you gave us that message today. I mean, Tony Beall, one of the great minds in the nonprofit sector, he joins us all Fridays for any and all things about fundraising. You can ask Tony questions directly. You can find him on social media. He's very active in LinkedIn, or you can just reach out at info@americannonprofitacademy.com, and then we'll queue that up for him and make a direct contact as well. Always great to get into your brain and your fabulous jacket with this prophecy piece. Yeah, the jacket's amazing. Madam Fundraise might have to borrow that for next year.
Not a problem.
I'm just saying, but really a lot of fun and really some important things. And again, I think the message is clear today. These things all weave together, interestingly enough, and not in a way that I would have thought before we started this episode, Tony. So thank you for linking those things together. Another thanks and another link that we have back to our nonprofit community and beloved sector are our presenting sponsors, and they include the amazing team over at Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. Okay, my friend, I'm ready to go full force into the new year. You've given me some great ideas and tools to be more successful in 2025.
Wonderful.
That's a great gift. Hey,
Good stuff.
everybody. It really is. As we end each and every episode, we want to leave you with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. See you again.